Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquatazoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you about dealing with multiple managers. I know that might sound a little nightmarish to some of you, and I totally understand, but dealing with multiple managers happens to the best of us, all of us perhaps. And I just wanted to try and make it a little bit easier to navigate, a little bit more easy to comprehend perhaps. It's not that uncommon that this happens, and in zoos and aquariums it happens quite frequently, and so let's just get into it. Specifically in zoos and aquariums, they're operating a lot of the time, every day, sometimes all day and all night. And you've got multiple teams, you might be working multiple shifts, and there are many people that are quote unquote in charge, right? On a daily basis, your daily manager, the manager on duty might change depending on your, position. As far as animal care goes, we typically have multiple levels of leadership throughout the animal care departments. And so that brings me to, how do we deal with when we have multiple managers or multiple levels of managers? Who are we listening to? What's going on? Where are we getting our information from? What are we expected to do? Okay, I'll be honest, there's not really an easy way to answer this. It's going to be different for each person, for each manager involved, for each organization involved. It's complicated, right? But what I wanted to note is that this happens. It's very common. You might have your direct supervisor there today, but your direct supervisor may be off tomorrow, and you may have another kind of level that steps in to fill that role when that person's not around, right? And so you're just trying to get your work done. And now you've got multiple levels of leadership who are involved with your day-to-day activities. And sometimes one manager has one opinion about something while another manager has another opinion about something, and things get very confusing. I guess I'll start this off by talking about a group that sometimes exists, but is not talked about very often, and that is the peer group, or the peer who thinks that they're your boss. Somebody who's highly opinionated, they've probably been there for a while, and they want to tell you everything about what you're doing wrong, right? So technically, this person is not your boss and therefore could theoretically be disregarded, right? If that makes it simpler for you, I guess that's one solution for it, because that person does not hold an actual place of authority within the organization's ranks. Therefore, you technically can ignore them. And if you are operating this way, stop it. Nobody wants to hear that. I understand that if you've got some tenure somewhere, you have some time under your belt, you've got experience, you want to step in and give some advice, that's fine. But do not do so in a way that you're expecting someone to react to your words or your demands or your mandates the way that someone in an official authority position would, right? If you have influence, then that will happen regardless. You know what I mean? If you have worked on those relationships and you've been, teaching and training and working with these people around you, and you make a comment that we should really do blank, or I'm conflicted about what's happening here, these people who you've built this relationship, they're going to listen to you, right? If you do that just because you've decided that you should speak up and order people around because you've been here the longest, they have full authority to ignore what you say. And also, you're coming across like an unpleasant coworker. So if you are that person, just be mindful of that and stop it. Put in that work to try and build those relationships with those people, and that influence will come naturally. You do not have to mandate people or give people orders when the boss is not around, right? Because they're not going to want to hear it anyway, and it's just going to hurt your reputation, and it's going to hurt your relationships. So, there you go. Ignore the person who is your peer, but believes they're your boss. If they don't actually have authority, then Do what you need to do to get your work done. That's all you're responsible for. They are technically responsible for their own work unless they have been given authority by the organization somehow, in which case they would be your supervisor or a supervisor. And if that's not the case, then move on with your life. That's one less opinion you have to listen to. Next up, how do we deal with more than one leader who's they're telling you conflicting things, right? They're asking you to do things differently than you're used to. They're making strange requests that might not align with what you typically would do. Change is not always a bad thing, but I would say measure it against what your team's kind of ground rules might be. Like, what's the point here? What's the mission maybe of the organization, the mission of your group versus the mission of the organization? Try and look through those kind of frameworks to see if this is something that really needs to be done in this time frame, in this way, or is it something that you need to kind of ponder, hold off on, talk to your actual supervisor about it, and get some guidance, right? There's always an option. Other than being in an emergency situation, there's time to consider some of this stuff when you're being asked to do it, maybe by your boss's boss or the manager of another department. They don't necessarily manage you, but they're asking you to do something that you're not sure about. It might go against what you normally do. It might just confuse you. You don't see the point. You're wondering why this other person is asking you to do this. Other than in times of emergency, where you have to act quickly and make decisions fast, then maybe hold on to it. Hold on to it for a minute. Think it over. Talk it over with your supervisor or with another supervisor, maybe that you trust, and look at it through the framework of what your mission is, what your team's mission is, and what your organization's mission is. Does it align with those things? Then maybe it's something that you really should consider doing. I guess I kind of have an example of this. I was dealing with my own supervisor, but I had to speak up on behalf of another department because they were giving the other department some orders, I would say, that did not fly with that department, right? So we unfortunately had a very large animal that had passed away, and we brought it out of its exhibit. It took many of us to do it because, again, this was a large animal. The leader of that department was out of the office. It was only temporary. He had just gone to the dentist. It was not supposed to be a big deal, right? But this kind of emergency situation happened while he was out. And so my supervisor took over and we worked together, all of us, their department and ours, to get this animal out. And then we were trying to figure out what the next step was, right? And so my supervisor advised, how do I say this nicely? Disassembling the animal behind our building, just because it was very large and they were trying to figure out how to do a proper necropsy on it, which is, investigation of cause of death and all that fun stuff. But basically it was so big that it couldn't fit into one of our vehicles. And so she was advising that department to remove parts so that it would fit. And given that leadership for that department was not there, I knew that this was not going to fly with their department. I've worked closely with them prior to this point, and I kind of knew what they were about and how they worked and what they were thinking. And also I could see it on their faces. So I had to step in and say, no, we probably shouldn't do that. Let's wait until we can at least talk to this other leader who was unfortunately on laughing gas while at the dentist. It's funny now. It wasn't funny then, but it is funny now. So, the animal's not going anywhere, and we had time. We had been in such a rush to get it out of its exhibit and deal with this situation. That department was dealing with the shock of losing this animal, so there's that as well. And then my supervisor was giving them the order because she had taken over in her peer's place. She was giving them orders that they were not equipped to deal with, and they couldn't really execute, and they were really torn about what to do. And so then I had to slow everyone down and get everybody calm, and we handled it a little differently. It was just the first idea that had come to her mind. She couldn't think of another way of doing it, and that's okay. But in an emergency situation, once you're out of the emergency portion, the we need to act fast kind of portion, that's where we were at. We were beyond the needing to act immediately portion of the emergency. Now we were dealing with, what do we do with this now? What's next, right? And so then we could slow down. And so I asked everybody to slow down and we could figure this out. So it's kind of a different viewpoint of having multiple leaders on site. We were dealing with two of them at the time. One of them was off site, one of them was on site, and we were trying to deal with a situation, right? And the department over whom this animal was a part, like, those people, those caretakers, those keepers were uncomfortable with what they were being asked to do, and I could tell. I could see it, and I asked everybody to slow down so we can make really well-informed decisions at this point, because we were past the frantic make a decision now point in the whole activity. In this situation, both of our departments were operating under a safety first kind of framework, right? That was definitely how we approached everything, how we were trying to deal with the situation, was to make sure that everyone's safe. The animal, whether it was alive or not, we wanted it to be safe. We wanted the staff to be safe. It was a large animal. We had to use a lot of tools and manpower to move it, right? And so during that whole thing, we were trying to be safe, right? So then when we got to the point where we weren't sure what to do, that department's leader was not there, and we were trying to figure out how to transport this animal, then it was more of a, how is this going to look from someone outside animal husbandry's viewpoint, right? Because we were in a back part of a parking lot that was still viewable by guests. And if they had seen us trying to essentially remove parts of this animal to get it into a vehicle, it was deceased, by the way. Like, it was not going to feel any pain. This was technically not a big deal. However, just the optics of that would have been wild. Guests would not have understood what was going on. They would have made some assumptions about what was happening, and that would have looked bad on the aquarium. So then at that point, we were trying to figure out what's the best way to get the most information from this animal, this unexpected death that we had, as well as make sure that guests don't misunderstand what we're doing. You know, we could talk about it. We could bring guests back there to see what was going on. They'd probably be kind of fascinated, but just the, I guess, jarring nature of viewing that, or potentially viewing that, would have been quite off-putting and probably would have made them wonder what kind of facility this is. Now, we were an upstanding facility. We were always trying to do what was best for the animals, you know, all of that stuff, all the things that AZA facilities try to do. But it would have been misunderstood. So then we were switching frameworks at that point. It was beyond safety first because we had gotten through that part. And now we were looking at what is the guest seeing? What does this look like for the animals? What are we going to learn from the animal if we do this procedure where we're removing parts to get it to fit on a vehicle? So anyway, this is a very morbid story, and I apologize for that. But it's kind of an example of what can happen, because you never know who's going to be on site to make decisions. You never know what kind of decisions are going to need to be made. It's different when it's an emergency situation versus not an emergency situation. And so dealing with multiple leaders who are telling you kind of conflicting things, or telling you something that seems a little off from what you would normally do or the way that you normally work, it makes a difference. And navigating that is really, really hard. I will mention that there are times when a leader for an organization, and it could be any organization, it's not just zoos and aquariums, may be waiting for the direct supervisor to not be available to tell the crew, the staff, the team something. Either give them information or ask them to do something, specifically when the direct supervisor is not around. Right? That's a very complicated situation, especially if we're talking about skip levels here. So, not necessarily your boss, but your boss's boss, right? That boss's boss may come and say, I want you to do XYZ. And all of a sudden, you're not really sure what you need to be doing. Yes, I guess you need to do what that person says, but it doesn't necessarily hurt to loop your supervisor, your direct supervisor into it, just to make sure that things are still aligning. And that's when that framework is still very important. So I guess in zoo and aquarium work, safety is a big, big focus of the work that we do, especially in animal care. We're trying to make sure that everything is as safe as possible. And, we may not get it every time, but we strive to make sure that things are safe. Right? So if a skip level manager comes in and asks somebody to do something, say for the benefit of a donor, let's say, just hypothetical here. They say, hey, donor XYZ is here. I really want them to see this animal do this cool thing. Maybe that's a procedure that you don't do with less than 2 people. And if you're by yourself, you normally don't do that, but they're telling you that they want it done. So now you're in this predicament about, do I do what this high-level manager says because the donor's here? Like, you're put in a weird position, right? So how do you navigate that? Honestly, I would talk to them about it and be like, lay it out. Here's what our procedure is. Especially, always have your procedures written down so you can reference that for them, because a written procedure needs to be followed, right? So you can show them or tell them about your normal procedure, why it requires, 2 people to do that. The fact that you don't have 2 people right now, but maybe you can find someone else. Or if that manager is willing to put themselves in that position to do that thing, more than likely, if you're in animal care, your boss might be an animal care person, right? So they might understand that they are of what they're asking you to do, right? So they may understand and say, oh, let's just wait until we're safe, because that should be their ultimate goal as well, right? Or they're probably in animal care in the past and they're like, oh, I can do this portion of it. Does that make it safe? Do you feel okay about that? If not, we'll wait, right? That's what a good leader would do. I don't know what kind of situations you might be put into, but a good leader would listen to that questioning or information about typical procedures for safety reasons, since that is a core tenet of what we do every day. We are trying to be safe. Safe for the animals, safe for the staff, safe for the guests. Safety is a huge part of what we do. Otherwise, animals are running amok around here, and people are getting hurt, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to do all that paperwork. So in this scenario, if your boss's boss comes in and says, I have donor XYZ, we want this thing done, please stick up for yourself, understanding what that core tenet is. So safety being a core tenet of what you do, or a main goal of your facility or your team, approach it with that in hand, I guess. Tell them, we normally do this procedure at this time or with these people, and this is why we have these safety features in place, because things can go wrong. Just explain what's going on from that perspective. Will it work every time? Possibly not, but if you are working for a good person, a good leader, they're going to understand what you're saying and be like, right, safety. I didn't think about that. I'm sorry for asking you to do that. Or let's just wait until we can get the right number of people in here, or the right individuals in here to do this correctly, because I don't want anything to go wrong. I want everything to be safe, because that's what we're trying to do with our work. Same goes for something like animal welfare or staff welfare, honestly. if you're being asked to do something that seems a little off when it comes to animal welfare or staff welfare, you can also bring those up. If they are actually a part of how your organization or your team operates, remember to arm yourself with that and understand deeply that these are things that your team has been striving for, and you can present that to the supervisor who's asking you to do something strange or out of the ordinary, and just explain your position with that idea in mind. It's not always going to work, but it will be very difficult for them to argue that because, say our team is built on guest experience. We're trying to provide the best guest experience. If I do this thing that you're asking me to do, that means I can't do the thing that really enhances guest experience. Or, if I take this animal off exhibit right now so that the donor can see it and interact with it, first of all, it's not as safe because that's not following our animal handling protocols, as well as it is now unavailable for guests to see on exhibit, right? So there's a couple of different avenues there, things that your team or your organization values that now your supervisor of whatever level is asking you to kind of violate almost, but explaining it through those frameworks helps them to understand, oh right, just because the donor asked for it doesn't mean that we can say yes, or it doesn't mean we can say yes right now. Maybe after hours when it doesn't impact the guest experience, then we can do said thing when we have established, the right number of people there, the protocols, and then it's not, negatively affecting what guests are experiencing while they're in the facility, right? So there are ways around some of that. Maybe you need more time to do it right. Maybe you need more resources to do it right. Maybe you really want to talk to your direct supervisor because you're a little uneasy about what you're being asked to do. All of that is valuable, is relevant, is valid. And so I would hope that any supervisor that's asking you to do something that's really unusual or out of the ordinary or makes you question what's going on or just feels off, your feelings are valid. I can't say that this will get them off your back or whatever, but this will more likely lead to a favorable outcome. And it's possible that they have in the past been able to ask anything of anyone. Some of these high-level managers, even without realizing that they're doing it, have people reacting to their every word, right? I know I worked with somebody in the past who ended up being very high level in their facility. And she just was walking through her facility one day, her zoo, and asked, oh, when are the lions coming out? And just because she was in the position that she was in, high level at that zoo, and she was just asking the question, the staff scrambled to get those lions out on exhibit, even though she was not asking for that. She did not need them to be out there. She was just curious as to when they would be out there. It was not a big deal. She did not intend to make anyone scramble for anything. She just asked the question, and it was interpreted as, oh gosh, she wants these animals out right now. And so people in these higher level positions may not even know that they're being interpreted weirdly. It could be somebody who's just asking a question, and since they are who they are and they are in the position that they're in, it feels like it's a more urgent matter and that it needs to be addressed or somebody needs to act. We need to do something. We need to fix this. When really they're just genuinely curious as to what the plan was. They did not intend to get into the middle of anything or push any animals out on exhibit early. She did realize that that's what was happening, the way everyone reacted. She's like, no. She managed to stop them before they shifted the lions out on exhibit way early so that they could still have their normal routine and everything. So no harm, no foul. Everything was fine. But people may be used to either getting what they're asking for right away or just asking questions and not realizing the impact of their position and their words on their staff might be. And so it's okay to take a moment to think about it. It's okay to consult some peers and make sure that you're not interpreting something weird, because that also happens. I've done it before where somebody has said something to me or asked me to do something and I've read way too far into it and assumed that they were trying to pull something over on me or anything like that. And I just asked somebody else and they're like, oh, no. This situation just happened. It just happened to line up with, what they're asking and this day and the fact that our boss isn't here. It's not malicious. It's just a unfortunate timing. That's all. And so I have been corrected before when I'm reading too far into things, and I realized that I misinterpreted what was going on, and I thought nefarious things were happening, and they were not. And so we as leaders also need to be aware of the impact that we're having. Yes, we might be covering for someone else who's out of the office. We might be just asking people who are reporting to someone else, either below us or, at some other level. They're not our direct reports, but, there's not a problem with engaging in conversation and asking questions and things like that. Just be aware of how you're being interpreted and make sure that you're not causing confusion for someone and their department. You may not know these people as well as you know your own direct reports, so something that may seem like an offhand comment to you may sound like an order to somebody else, right? And it's okay if that happens, but also remember the importance of debriefing. Watch your tone and the reactions that you're getting when you're talking to people. And also, if there is a misunderstanding, please talk about it in the aftermath and just clarify what you meant. You were just asking the question, when are the lions going to be out here? And it was not intended to be a get the lions out here right now kind of situation as it was interpreted. That's a misunderstanding that is pretty minor, but it can definitely paint a picture for next time if it's handled correctly. So that person that I was working with that asked about the lions, she talked to the staff and was like, I'm not going to ask you to get the lions out just for fun. I'm not going to ask you to interrupt their daily routine. I was just asking a question about timing so I could come see them because she really loved lions, right? That is not a big deal, but understanding the aftermath of that question and how everyone interpreted it to mean that, oh, she wants the lions out right now. And that was a misunderstanding. And it's easy to see why that was a misunderstanding. She was a high-level manager in this facility, and she's asking about a specific animal. It was easy for the staff who did not work directly with her that often to misinterpret what she was saying and misunderstand and think that she meant something else. They learned quickly after that she's very laid back and would not ask them, being an animal care person herself, would not ask them to get the animals out of their daily routine for basically any reason, unless it was an emergency. So it was really important that she talked to them about what happened so that we all understand each other a little bit better. So we as leaders need to be very cognizant of how we're being reacted to and understand that misunderstandings do happen and we can move past that because we're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss what happened, where the confusion came in, what was really meant, and just get on a better page, a better understanding for future reference. So that when you are simply asking a question about where an animal is, it is not misinterpreted next time. They can just tell you, oh, they'll be out at 10 o'clock, right? So this situation is not easy to deal with. It's tough to understand and predict what is the best course of action when you're in the moment and you're dealing with people that you're not used to dealing with. Leaders, please pay attention to what you're saying, pay attention to how people react, and also make a habit of talking to the direct supervisors of the people or the team that you would like to do something different, right? If that is the case, that's what you're trying to get done. Talk to their supervisor so that they can, motivate them to do the right thing or change what they're doing for the correct reasons. They know those people better than you probably do. So make sure that you're not skipping levels just for fun or because you have the authority to do so. Do it for the right reasons. And everybody else who is dealing with this situation, understand that mistakes might happen. It's okay. We're going to talk about it afterwards so that it doesn't happen again. But really pay attention to what your team's goals are, your missions, your values, that sort of things, and just pay attention to what's being asked of you and if it fits into those. Is it part of your values? Is it part of your mission? And that should help you figure out what to do. Okay. If you have any questions about that, any leadership or management things, or zoo and aquarium stuff, you can write it up in an email and send it to me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget you can follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you'd like to take a vacation and you don't know where to start, I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you out. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay, thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.